Hello, welcome back to Shock's Talks. I'm Shakti, and today is a really beautiful, misty, rainy day where I am in California. Today, I got to stroll down memory lane and visit the neighborhood that I lived in when I lived in LA 15 years ago. Oh, it just felt so good. It just felt so good to return to a place as a new person, but also feeling that that was one of my homes in this world. That was an important place for me, and it'll always feel like a home in a way. So, just really magical. Anyway, today I want to talk about a couple different things. Mostly, I'm going to focus on the notes I took on a lecture that Richard Dolan did on disclosure, which I think is really fascinating and important. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about Pavel on Psicoactivo did a video this past week, about Dylan Borland and Matthew Brown and the idea of keeping whistleblower protections separate from the issue of the missing scientists. So, the UFO community can get a little inflammatory at times because it's like crazy information all the time. A lot's going on all the time. There's more talk of Trump actually using that aliens.gov site to disclose UFO information to the public. So, this might actually be the first time a president of the United States openly shares information. I mean, none of us are holding our breaths over what that will be. And this is exactly what the Dolan lecture is about. It's like disclosure is ongoing, contact is ongoing. It's not going to be this one big moment. We know that. Everybody here knows that. But I thought it was interesting that Pavel was making the point to just keep the issues separate because they are separate issues, and whistleblower protections need to be put in place. This week, also, Kelly Chase, who I've talked about quite a bit, she is someone who did the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast. She did Cosmosis, and now she's doing a new podcast called Inquiry. And for some time now, she's been collaborating with J. Christopher King of the Experiencer Group, but she's canceling him right now. I really respect Kelly doing what she has to do to separate from Jay. And so, anyway, that's some news that's happening in the UFO community. All right, Dolan on disclosure. His lecture, and I'll post all these videos below as always. His lecture is called Contact Without Disclosure. And he's talking about how contact is ongoing. A visual sighting of an object that comes close enough and there's an interaction. That's his definition of contact. It's not like I shook hands with an alien necessarily. And he does say that there are some cases where people did see aliens or a ship came down that are credible, and he cites Rua, Zimbabwe, as one of those, very credible. But mostly when he's thinking about contact, he's focusing on, I saw something in the sky, but it had like an interaction with me. The dominant pattern is observing objects. It approaches you and does whatever it does. I took notes on flashcards from his lecture. See? There's no language, no consistent behavior, and this looks like a managed form of interaction. This is a big point that he makes again and again in this video. It looks like a managed interaction. It's not random. The UFOs are kind of doing something on purpose with the humans that they come into contact with, and it's consistent and yet constrained. So these are not just willy-nilly all over the place interactions that where anything goes. No, there's a real pattern that we can observe over the years, and it includes seeing the thing does some stuff, and when it's ready, it leaves on its own terms. So what he goes on to talk about in this lecture is how deliberate these encounters are, how limited they are in clarity, as in whoever's doing it doesn't really want us to have all the information. They want to give us as much as they need to give us, only in order to learn about us. They're controlling, they're choosing when it starts, where it happens, and they leave when they want to leave. He talks about the military encounters, he talks about the oceans and lakes and how they are vast and largely unobserved. So, there's a strong pattern here where it seems that That's their domain on Earth. Not only are they here around the Earth, they're on it, they're in the oceans. There's probably bases in all kinds of places on the Earth that we don't have control over, and they're here and they're paying attention to us. So he calls it an asymmetry. They're in control again. And you see this across cultures. So he said these types of interactions, these same patterns are happening all around the world. Again, this is not just in the US, this is everywhere. And governments worldwide can monitor, they can have these interactions, they can make notes, take pictures, do whatever they do, but they're not in control of them. They're not the ones saying, we want this to happen, and then it happens. Now, there may be an exception to that, which is the whole Skywatcher thing. If it's true that certain frequencies are bringing some of the phenomena into range in order to be observed, then the governments may have kind of hacked it a little bit. They may have figured out a way to get some interaction back, but it's just the very beginning of it, and they're still not in control. So that's important and interesting. And the conclusion that he makes is that even though there are some ancient accounts that are credible, he always goes back to this. He's like, it's the last 80 or so years that really matter. This is when there's been a heightened activity, lots and lots of sightings, persistent, ongoing, global, water, sky, land, civilian, non-civilian. They tend to go around remote areas when it's a civilian encounter, like country places out in the country, not like in the middle of a big city usually. But there are things that happen in cities. And then you have the Navy and the military bases and the nuclear bases. They're always hovering around our nuclear activity, and that's well documented. So these are the important patterns for us to watch. It's not confusing, it's clear. And that's what I love about Dolan, because in this world of like misinformation and all the other weird stuff, it's like, some people want you to be confused, but don't be confused. This is well documented history that is presenting a clear pattern, and that's exactly what Dolan is outlining in this video. So he talks about the 1940s being critical, and then he goes into more of a human history aspect of the whole lecture, which is brilliant. And he talks about like where we're at now. It all started in the nuclear age and now is the culmination of this trajectory that we've been on. He thinks that's why we got their attention in the first place, which is a very good theory, I think. He talks about fragmentation. So he talks about these three things: fragmentation, acceleration, and centralization as these three components that are characterizing reality right now that started in the nuclear age and are culminating now. So the fragmentation is that we're more divided than ever right now. Then you have the acceleration, which is this rapid advancement of technology and also just the sheer volume of this information that we are all being bombarded with all day, every day. And then he talks about the centralization, which is how the fragmentation pushes us towards centralization. And this is the nature of complex systems. This makes sense. Tom Campbell talks about this when it comes to engineering. He talks about how truly it is elegance and simplicity that make a really good system. And I think about building, for example, and these beautiful ancient techniques of working with like stick and mud or perfectly cut bamboo that is flexible and rigid and strong and plentiful. Anyway, we've gone down a path and there's no going back. So where we're at now is we're in a really fragile place, and we all feel that. That's why I feel calmed by this reflection, because it's like it's grounding me to think like, oh, that's why everything feels so freaking crazy, because it's complex and fragile. Because we started down these pathways and other human groups around the planet, simultaneously started down some of these pathways, it became a competitive thing. once you start, other people are like, well, if they're doing that, I have to do that. And then it becomes this competitive thing. And we've also just stayed in that dynamic all this time. We are competing now. We competed with our nuclear weapons, and now we're competing with our advanced tech that is based on the reverse engineered anomalous tech. Again, to wrap it all up, he says, this engagement's happening. So there is no big disclosure necessarily where they come out and say, hey guys, we're here. This is who we are. How would we do that to the coral reef? Hey guys, I'm a human and I'm here. And just so you know, my name is Shakti. And they're just like, are we even capable of managing what we've created? So that's what I learned this week. Thanks for joining my anomalous study hall, and please leave some comments, like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on Shocks Talks.